Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the weather scanner one more time. The numbers on the small screen made his stomach tight with worry. A massive storm was coming toward his mountain shelter, and it would arrive within the hour. He had seen storms like this before on planet Kepler, but never one this big. The electrical readings were off the charts, and the wind speeds looked deadly. He moved quickly around his shelter, checking every system he had built over the past 3 years. The water tanks were full and sealed tight. The food storage containers were locked down, and the backup power cells were charged and ready. Jake had learned the hard way that storms on this planet could kill anyone caught outside. Most of the human colonists had given up and left this world behind, but Jake stayed. He believed humans could make this place home if they were smart and tough enough. The shelter was his masterpiece. He had carved it deep into the side of a cliff using tools salvaged from the abandoned colony ships. The entrance was hidden behind rocks and metal plates that could withstand the worst weather. Inside, he had created a living space that was warm and dry with everything he needed to survive for weeks. The walls were lined with metal sheets, and the floor was covered with thick padding made from ship materials. Jake heard the first rumble of thunder in the distance. The storm was moving faster than his scanner had predicted. He quickly sealed the main door and activated the emergency locks. The shelter had 3 different door systems, and each one was designed to keep the deadly electrical storms outside. He checked the air filters and made sure the ventilation system was working properly. The last thing he needed was to suffocate while hiding from the storm. Lightning began flashing outside, and the thunder grew louder with each passing minute. Jake settled into his control chair and watched the weather readings on his jury-rigged monitoring system. He had built it using parts from old colony computers and some alien technology he had found in the ruins of a crashed ship. The system was not pretty, but it worked well enough to keep him alive. The wind outside began howling like a wild animal, and Jake could hear debris hitting the outer walls of his shelter. He was glad he had spent so much time reinforcing the structure. The shelter had survived 12 major storms already, and he was confident it would survive this one too. He poured himself a cup of hot coffee from his thermal pot and tried to relax as the storm raged outside. Suddenly, there was a loud bang at his main door. Jake froze with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Nothing should be moving outside in this storm. The electrical discharges would kill any animal or person within seconds. He grabbed his scanner and pointed it toward the door, but the readings were confused by all the electrical activity outside. Another bang echoed through the shelter, and this time it sounded like someone or something was trying to get inside. Jake moved carefully toward the door controls. His hand hovered over the emergency release button, opening the door during a storm like this was dangerous, but leaving someone outside to die was not something he could live with. The banging became more urgent and desperate. Whatever was out, there needed help and needed it fast. He made his decision and hit the emergency release. The first door hissed open, and immediately he could hear the storm much louder. Rain and wind rushed into the small airlock space between the doors. Jake waited for a few seconds, then opened the second door. A figure stumbled inside and collapsed on the floor of his shelter. Jake quickly sealed both doors and turned to help his unexpected visitor. What he saw made him step back in shock. The figure on his floor was definitely not human. She was tall and thin with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. Her skin was changing colors as he watched, shifting from blue to purple to silver. She had long dark hair that seemed to move on its own and eyes that glowed with a soft green light. The alien woman pushed herself up to a sitting position and looked around the shelter with wide eyes. She seemed just as shocked to see Jake as he was to see her. She said something in a language he did not understand, and her skin flashed bright red for a moment. Jake could tell she was scared and confused. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm and spoke slowly and clearly. You are safe now. The storm cannot hurt you here. The woman stared at him for a long moment, and Jake could see her looking at all the equipment and systems he had built. Her expression changed from fear to amazement as she took in the sophisticated setup he had created. She tried to stand, but stumbled, and Jake moved quickly to help her. Her skin was warm to the touch, and he could feel a slight electrical charge running through her body. She was clearly not built for the harsh weather outside. As thunder crashed overhead, Jake realized his quiet life as a hermit had just become much more complicated. He had an alien visitor, and the storm showed no signs of stopping any time soon. The alien woman finally found her voice and spoke in perfect English, which surprised Jake completely. You are human, she said, and her skin shifted to a pale yellow color. I did not expect to find anyone living in this region, especially not during storm season. Her voice was musical and strange, but easy to understand. Jake handed her a dry towel and gestured toward a chair near his heating unit. My name is Jake Morrison. I have been living here for 3 years now. What is your name, and what were you doing outside in that storm? The woman accepted the towel gratefully and began drying her long hair. As she warmed up, her skin gradually returned to a more stable silver-blue color. I am called Zara, she replied. I am a scientist studying the life forms on this planet. My people are the Velkari, and we have been observing this world for many cycles. She looked around the shelter again with obvious amazement. We believed this planet was too dangerous for primitive species to colonize. How did you survive here for so long? Jake felt a bit insulted by being called primitive, but decided not to start an argument with his unexpected guest. Instead, he began explaining his survival methods while he prepared some hot soup for both of them. The trick is not fighting the planet, but learning to work with it. The storms follow patterns, and the wildlife gives warning signs when the weather is about to turn bad. Zara listened carefully as Jake described his daily routines and survival techniques. She seemed fascinated by his practical approach to problems that her people solved with advanced technology. Your methods are very different from ours, she admitted. The Velkari wait for planets to become fully stable before we attempt colonization. We have computer models that tell us it will take at least 200 years for this world to be safe. Your computers are wrong, Jake said simply. This planet is already becoming safer. The storms are getting weaker each year, and the soil is getting better for growing food. I have been keeping records, and the improvements are clear. He showed Zara his handwritten logs and crude charts that tracked weather patterns and environmental changes. The storm outside grew even stronger, and Jake noticed some of his monitoring equipment was starting to malfunction. Warning lights flashed on his power control panel, and he could hear strange noises coming from the ventilation system. We have a problem, he said, and quickly moved to check his systems. This storm is stronger than I thought, and some of my equipment is failing. Zara stood up immediately. What can I do to help? She asked. Jake was surprised by her quick offer of assistance. He had expected an advanced alien to look down on his crude technology, but Zara seemed genuinely interested in learning how everything worked. Can you hold this light steady while I check the power connections? He asked. Working together, they began troubleshooting the failing systems. Jake was impressed by how quickly Zara understood his jury-rigged equipment, even though it was completely different from her people's technology. She had a natural scientific mind and could see the logic behind his improvisations. When the main power coupling started sparking, she calmly suggested a solution that Jake had not considered. Your backup power system is fighting against the main system, she observed. If you isolate them completely and run them in sequence instead of parallel, you might prevent the overload. Jake stared at her for a moment, then quickly made the adjustments she suggested. The sparking stopped, and the power reading stabilized. "That was brilliant," Jake said with genuine admiration. "I have been struggling with that power problem for months." Zara smiled, and her skin flashed a warm golden color. "Your engineering is very creative," she replied. "You solve problems in ways my people would never think to try. We rely too much on our technology, and not enough on our minds." As they continued working, Jake learned more about Zara and her mission on the planet. She had been studying what her people called impossible life forms. These were creatures that should not be able to survive in the harsh environment, but somehow thrived anyway. "I think I understand now why these life forms succeed," she said thoughtfully. "They adapt and change instead of waiting for perfect conditions." The storm reached its peak intensity, and even Jake began to worry about his shelter's ability to withstand the assault. The walls shook with each thunder crash, and he could hear metal groaning under the stress. But instead of panicking, he calmly began implementing emergency procedures he had developed over years of surviving similar storms. Zara watched in amazement as Jake systematically shut down non-essential systems to preserve power and sealed backup ventilation shafts to prevent structural damage. "You have planned for everything," she said with obvious respect. "Most species, including my own, would simply flee from conditions like this." "Running away does not solve anything," Jake replied as he adjusted the shelter's structural supports. "If you want to live somewhere, you have to learn to deal with whatever problems that place throws at you. This planet has been teaching me lessons for 3 years, and I am finally starting to be a good student." Thunder crashed overhead with enough force to make both of them duck instinctively. The lights flickered but held steady thanks to their earlier repairs. Jake looked at Zara and realized that despite their different backgrounds, they made a good team. She brought scientific knowledge and he brought practical experience. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. The storm finally began to weaken as dawn approached, and Jake felt safe enough to prepare a proper meal for himself and Zara. She watched with curiosity as he cooked food made from local plants and preserved meat from native animals. "You eat the indigenous life forms?" she asked with surprise. "Our scientists said the native biology would be toxic to most off-world species." Jake smiled as he stirred the stew. "It was at first. I got very sick during my early months here. But I kept trying different preparation methods and gradually built up tolerance to the local biochemistry. Now I can eat almost anything that grows or lives on this planet." He served Zara a small portion and encouraged her to try it carefully. Zara tasted the food cautiously, and her skin brightened with surprise. "This is actually quite good," she said. "The flavors are complex and interesting." "How did you learn which plants were safe to eat?" Jake explained his systematic approach to testing local food sources, starting with tiny amounts and gradually increasing portions while monitoring his body's reactions. "Your people would call this primitive trial and error," Jake said. "But it works better than waiting for laboratory analysis that might never come. I learned more about this planet's biology in 6 months of careful testing than your scientists probably learned in years of remote observation." As they ate, Jake told Zara more about his life on the planet. He had originally been a construction engineer with the failed human colony. When the colonial government decided to abandon the settlement, most people eagerly returned to Earth. But Jake believed the planet had potential and convinced 12 others to stay behind and try to make it work. "What happened to the other 12? Zara asked gently. Jake's expression grew sad as he explained how the group had gradually broken apart. Some had given up and called for rescue ships. Others had died in accidents or storms. 2 had simply walked away into the wilderness and never returned. "I have been alone for 8 months now," he admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I should have left with the others." Zara reached across the table and touched his hand. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with gentle energy. "You did the right thing by staying," she said firmly. "What you have accomplished here is remarkable. You have proven that intelligent species can adapt to hostile environments instead of simply avoiding them." Jake felt encouraged by her words and began showing Zara some of his more impressive innovations. He had modified standard tools to work with the planet's unusual magnetic fields. His metal detector could find useful materials buried deep underground. His water purifier used local minerals to clean contaminated liquid better than standard filters. The most important discovery was learning to predict weather patterns by watching animal behavior, Jake explained as he pointed to charts on his wall. The native creatures have evolved to sense electromagnetic changes that happen before major storms. When the flying lizards start hiding in deep caves, you know bad weather is coming within hours. Zara studied his charts with growing excitement. "This information could revolutionize how my people approach planetary colonization," she said. "We spend decades studying worlds from orbit before deciding if they are suitable. You have learned more about practical survival in 3 years than our best scientists discover in 50. Jake felt a warm pride at her praise, but also a growing concern. "If your people learn about my methods, will they want to take over this planet?" he asked. "I do not want to lose the home I have built here." Zara's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple color as she considered his question. "The Volcari are not conquerors," she assured him. "We seek knowledge and understanding more than territory. If anything, your success here proves that cooperation between species might be more valuable than competition." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "I would like to convince my people to work with humans instead of ignoring them." As the day progressed, Jake found himself increasingly drawn to Zara's intelligence and curiosity. She asked thoughtful questions about everything she saw and offered insights that helped him understand his own achievements better. She was clearly brilliant, but not arrogant about her advanced knowledge. Instead, she seemed genuinely interested in learning from his practical experience. Zara told him more about her own background. She was considered unusual among her people because she preferred field research to laboratory work. Most Volcari scientists studied things from a safe distance, but Zara wanted to experience alien environments directly. "That is why I was on the surface when the storm hit," she explained. "I was collecting samples near the mountain base when the weather turned dangerous." "Your research ship," Jake asked, "is it damaged?" Zara nodded sadly. "The storm's electromagnetic pulse disrupted many systems. The ship can still fly, but the communication equipment is not working properly. My colleagues will assume I am dead if I do not report in soon." Jake's monitoring equipment suddenly began beeping with urgent warnings. He quickly checked the readings, and his face grew serious. "We have a bigger problem than your damaged ship," he said grimly. "The seismic sensors are showing massive underground activity. There is going to be a major earthquake in this region, and it could happen any time, in the next few days." Zara looked at the data with alarm. "An earthquake this size could destroy everything in a 100-kilometer radius," she said. "We need to evacuate immediately." But Jake was already studying topographical maps and checking his geological surveys. "Running away is not the only option," he said thoughtfully. "I have been exploring cave systems deeper in the mountain. With the right preparations, we might be able to survive even a major quake." "That is incredibly dangerous," Zara protested. "No one attempts to survive planetary-scale disasters without massive technological support." Jake looked at her with a determined expression that she was beginning to recognize. "Maybe it is time someone tried," he said simply. "I did not stay on this planet just to run away when things get difficult." Zara paced around the shelter, trying to convince Jake to abandon his dangerous plan. "My ship might be damaged, but it can still reach orbit," she argued. We can call for Volcari rescue vessels and evacuate safely. There is no reason to risk your life trying to survive an earthquake that could level mountains. Jake continued studying his maps and geological data, ignoring her pleas. I am not leaving, he said firmly. This is my home, and I will not let an earthquake destroy everything I have built. Besides, your own readings show the seismic activity might continue for months. Even if we evacuate now, we could never return. Then we will find you a better planet, Zara said desperately. The Velkari know of dozens of worlds that are safer and easier to colonize. You could have a comfortable life without constantly fighting for survival. Jake looked up from his maps with an expression that was both sad and determined. You still do not understand, he said gently. I am not here because I have no other choice. I am here because I choose to be here. This planet has taught me things about myself that I never would have learned in a safe, comfortable place. Running away now would mean giving up everything that makes life worthwhile. Zara felt frustrated by his stubborn refusal to see reason, but she was also beginning to understand why he had survived when others failed. His determination was unlike anything she had encountered among her own people. The Velkari avoided challenges whenever possible, but Jake seemed to seek them out. If you insist on staying, then I will help you, she said finally. But I want you to know this goes against everything I was taught about risk management. Jake smiled at her decision, and his whole face lit up with gratitude. Having your scientific knowledge will make all the difference, he admitted. I know the local geology, but you understand planetary physics better than I ever could. They spent the next several hours planning their survival strategy. Jake had discovered a network of caves deep inside the mountain that appeared stable enough to withstand major seismic activity. The main challenge was making the caves livable for an extended period. They would need air circulation water sources and protection from cave-ins. Zara examined Jake's crude maps of the cave system and began calculating structural loads and stress points. These caves are natural, but we can reinforce them using principles from Velkari architecture, she suggested. If we combine your practical engineering with my theoretical knowledge, we might actually succeed. Jake gathered his essential tools and equipment, while Zara retrieved some advanced devices from her damaged research pod. She had brought portable energy generators and structural reinforcement materials that could strengthen the cave walls. My superiors would be horrified to see me using expensive research equipment for something this risky, she said with a nervous laugh. The first earthquake tremors began while they were moving supplies into the cave system. The ground shook for nearly a minute, and Jake could hear rocks falling somewhere deep in the mountain. That was just a preview, he said grimly. The main event will be much worse. Working together, they began reinforcing the cave chambers that would serve as their temporary home. Jake's understanding of local rock formations guided where they placed Zara's technological supports. Her energy devices powered tools that let them work much faster than Jake could have managed alone. Your species has an unusual approach to problem solving, Zara observed as she watched Jake jury rig a ventilation system using cave formations and salvaged materials. You see possibilities where my people would only see obstacles. It is both admirable and terrifying. As they worked, Jake found himself opening up to Zara about his deepest motivations for staying on the planet. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for choosing this life, he admitted. But easy living makes people weak and soft. I would rather struggle for something meaningful than live comfortably without purpose. Zara listened thoughtfully as she calibrated her structural reinforcements. My people have become very comfortable, she said quietly. We have eliminated most forms of struggle and hardship from our lives. Sometimes I wonder if we have lost something important in the process. She paused in her work and looked directly at Jake. You have shown me that there is value in facing challenges instead of avoiding them. The major earthquake hit without warning in the middle of their third day of preparation. The entire mountain seemed to twist and buckle as massive. Forces deep underground shifted and realigned. Jake and Zara were thrown to the cave floor as rocks rained down around them. The structural supports groaned under incredible stress, but held firm. For 10 terrifying minutes, the earth continued shaking with varying intensity. Some of their equipment was damaged, and several cave passages collapsed completely. But their main shelter remained intact, thanks to the combination of Jake's practical engineering and Zara's advanced technology. When the shaking finally stopped, they emerged from their protective shelter to find the landscape completely transformed. Entire hillsides had collapsed, and new valleys had formed where none existed before. Jake's original shelter was buried under tons of rock and debris. Everything he had built over 3 years was gone. "I am sorry about your home," Zara said softly, as they surveyed the destruction. Jake was quiet for a long time as he processed the loss of everything familiar. But when he finally spoke, his voice was steady and determined. "The shelter was just a building," he said. "What matters is that we survived and we can build again." Zara felt amazed by his resilience in the face of such devastating loss. Any Valkyrie would be crushed by the destruction of years of work, but Jake was already making plans for reconstruction. "You truly are remarkable," she said with genuine admiration. "I am beginning to understand why your species has survived and spread across the galaxy despite being considered primitive." In the days that followed, smaller aftershocks continued to reshape the mountain region. Jake and Zara worked together to expand their cave shelter and make it more comfortable for long-term habitation. She shared advanced techniques for creating sustainable living environments, while he contributed practical solutions for daily survival needs. "We make a good team," Jake said as they finished installing an improved water recycling system. "Your scientific knowledge and my practical experience complement each other perfectly." Zara smiled, and her skin shifted to a warm golden color that Jake had learned meant she was happy. 2 weeks after the earthquake, Zara's communication equipment finally began working again. She managed to send a signal to her research vessel and was surprised to receive an immediate response. "Commander Kess is very angry with me," she told Jake after finishing her conversation. "He assumed I was dead and was preparing to leave the system. Now he is demanding that I return to the ship immediately." Jake felt his heart sink at the news, even though he had known this moment would come. "Eventually, you should go back to your people," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You have already risked too much by staying here with me." But Zara shook her head firmly, and her skin flashed with determined red highlights. "I am not leaving until Commander Kess understands what we have accomplished here," she declared. "The Valkyrie need to learn about human adaptability and resilience. Your methods could change how we approach exploration and colonization." She began preparing a detailed report of everything they had experienced together. The next day, a Valkyrie shuttle landed near their cave shelter. Commander Kess emerged along with 2 other crew members, and Jake could immediately tell they were not happy about the situation. Kess was tall, even by Valkyrie standards, with skin that remained a cold blue-gray color. He looked at Jake with obvious disapproval. "Zara, you were sent to study primitive life forms, not to play survival games with them," Kess said in accented English. "This human has endangered your life with his reckless behavior. You will return to the ship immediately for medical evaluation." His tone made it clear he considered the discussion closed. But Zara stood her ground and gestured toward their cave shelter. "Commander, I request that you examine what Jake has accomplished before making any judgments. His survival techniques and innovations deserve serious study." Kess looked skeptical, but agreed to tour their underground facility. Jake led the Valkyrie delegation through the cave system, explaining how each area served a specific purpose. He showed them the water purification system that used local minerals, and the food storage area that maintained perfect temperature without external power. The Valkyrie officers seemed impressed despite themselves. "This is actually quite sophisticated," admitted one of the crew members as she examined Jake's ventilation system. "The engineering principles are sound, even if the materials are primitive." Commander Kess remained silent, but Jake could see him taking careful notes on a small device. Their tour was interrupted by another earthquake aftershock that sent everyone scrambling for safety. Jake calmly directed the Valkyrie to the most secure part of the cave system while checking his monitoring equipment. "This one registers about 4.8 on the local scale," he announced. "We should be safe in about 30 seconds. Commander Kess watched in amazement as Jake accurately predicted when the shaking would stop. "How did you know that?" he demanded. Jake explained his system for reading seismic patterns and predicting earthquake behavior. "Your species has scientific instruments that are far more accurate than mine," Jake said. "But you probably never thought to study earthquake survival techniques." The aftershock ended exactly when Jake predicted, and the Valkyrie began looking at him with new respect. "Your methods are unorthodox, but clearly effective," Kess admitted grudgingly. "Perhaps there is value in studying adaptive survival techniques." He turned to Zara with a thoughtful expression. "What exactly are you proposing?" Zara outlined her idea for a joint research station that would combine Valkyrie technology with human adaptability. "Jake has proven that intelligent species can colonize hostile worlds much faster than our computer models predict. If we work together, we could revolutionize planetary exploration and settlement." Commander Kess considered the proposal while examining more of Jake's innovations. He was particularly interested in the weather prediction methods and the techniques for processing local food sources. The Valkyrie Council would need to approve any formal cooperation agreement, he said finally, "but I am willing to recommend further study of these techniques." Jake felt hopeful, but also cautious about the implications. "I want to make sure that any cooperation respects human independence," he said firmly. "This planet may not be officially colonized by Earth, but I consider it my home. I will not accept being treated as a test subject or curiosity." "Your concerns are reasonable," Kess replied. "The Valkyrie have no interest in conquest or domination. We seek knowledge and understanding. A partnership that benefits both species would be preferable to any form of exploitation." His skin had shifted to a warmer blue color that Zara had. Taught Jake indicated sincerity. Over the following days more, Valkyrie scientists arrived to study Jake's survival methods and innovations. They were fascinated by his practical approach to problems that their people solved with complex technology. Jake found himself teaching courses on adaptation techniques and survival psychology to some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy. "Are becoming quite famous among my people," Zara told him as they watched another shuttle arrive with more researchers. "There are xenobiologists and sociologists who want to study human resilience as a survival trait. Some are even suggesting that adaptability might be more valuable than technological advancement." Jake felt overwhelmed by all the attention, but also excited about the possibilities. The Valkyrie offered to help him build a proper research facility that would attract human volunteers willing to attempt planetary colonization. "We could prove that humans and other species can work together to settle worlds that seem impossible to colonize," he said to Zara. The new research station was established 6 months later, with Jake as the human director and Zara as the Valkyrie scientific liaison. Earth sent 20 volunteers who were eager to try Jake's survival techniques on other challenging worlds. The Valkyrie provided advanced equipment and technological support, while the humans contributed practical experience and adaptive thinking. Jake stood outside the completed research facility, watching as human and Valkyrie scientists worked together on joint projects. The mountain landscape had recovered from the earthquake and was more beautiful than ever. Native plants were beginning to grow in the disturbed soil, and the local wildlife was adapting to the new terrain formations. "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" Zara asked as she joined him on the observation deck. Her skin showed the warm golden color that Jake had learned meant deep contentment. He smiled and put his arm around her shoulders, feeling grateful for everything they had accomplished together. "This is better than anything I imagined when I first decided to stay on this planet," he replied. "I thought I was just proving that humans could survive here. Instead, we proved that different species can learn from each other and accomplish things that neither could achieve alone." He looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them were other worlds waiting to be explored by teams of humans and aliens working together.